It is time to review a quite unique JRPG named Buccanyar. Just as a note, for those interested in the Steam version, you can find it as Cats Away. If you ask me why the name was changed, no idea. In any case, it was developed by Japanese studio Saisensen. Chances are that you know them because of games like Code of Princess and Blade Strangers. Yep, I know they are kind of obscure games. Maybe Code of Princess not so much because of a rare release, but you get the idea. Without further ado, let's dive into the usual topics: story, gameplay, graphics, and music. Buccanyar follows the story of an apocalyptic world, where the sea engulfed huge chunks of it, transforming the sea creatures into abhorrent beasts. After this event, the human beings were afraid of the sea, limiting their lives on small pieces of land available. However, as time passed, something like an angel descended, an angel that gave the human beings the strength to live. Somehow this event awoke every creature in the world, and that is how people sail the seas once again. This is how we follow three girls, named Kana, Alicia, and Lilia, that for their surprise were attacked by pirates. In face of this event, a one-eyed cat appeared out of nowhere to support our trio. After the naval confrontation, our mysterious cat gives our girls a letter, written by his father, talking about the Pillar of Light. Nonetheless, seems like a bigger Manus is around the corner, so he told them to follow the Eds on a map, finishing the letter with, "Your dad will be with you always." So this is how we embark on this journey. But what can I say about the following events? There is something funny about this game. It is confusing as heck, that sometimes it doesn't make that much sense what you're reading. Unfortunately, while I play it, I wasn't able to pay that much attention to a good chunk of the Japanese voice acting, but for the lines I remember, it was like they said something and what was written was entirely different. But taking fragments here and there, we can understand that these girls are in search of their father, and as the story develops, they start to face some of the weird mutations the intro talked about, or these so-called variants. Of course, as they reach new ports and places where there is civilization, new faces join the tale, not as direct companions, but more like comrades in arms, because of the events that starts to happen around. Now, I will say that the story isn't the main forte of this game, not just because of the poor translations, but because once you put everything together, it leaves with some questions. Nonetheless, I enjoy some parts where they explain about the so-called evolution that was mentioned at the beginning, and how these girls are kinda special. I know that a not so good localization can be seen as something negative, but I wouldn't say it is bad. At least to me it was entertaining, getting to know little fragments of why the world reached this state, and how these girls have to dive into this whole mess. While for a good chunk it is a trivial story, its ending made me quite sad, and I enjoy it. For all the things I thought it was going to be about, I didn't think that I would see something like that. And just because of those details, I will say it is a 7. Yes, I won't deny it is confusing and trivial on several moments, but what's cool is the direction it was pointed to. Gameplay-wise, this is a quite unique JRPG, because it says it is a tower offense kind of game, which reminds me to some PS1 games, which unfortunately I don't remember the names. Okay. The essence of Buccanyar is rather simple. It is a quest-driven game, where by quest, what I mean is that you have to reach specific parts in the map, or docks, accept some missions and complete them. And so you end up moving back and forth traveling different routes in the ocean, while also getting something like secondary quests as you unlock other options. Once getting into one of these areas, it is all about destroying every enemy, and in rare occasions, taking care of some allies. This is where the game could have been improved, because most quests are kinda similar. Several monsters or ships or flying units, and sometimes a little meats and the boss fights. So if you don't like what you're seeing, then stay away from this game, because this is what you're going to be doing for a while. Okay, within this quest is where you need to pay attention to multiple little details, but don't worry, it is a kinda easy game, aside from specific fights. On the left side we can see multiple bars. The one below the weapons are the cannon's HP, the ones on the left your companion's HP that operate said weapons, and the lowest one is the whole ship HP. In other words, if a weapon reaches 0, it is destroyed and you need to fix it. If cats are taken down, your weapon loses performance, and if the general ship HP gets down, it is a game over. On this front, what is important to keep in mind is that you can make multiple weapon sets. Some are specialized for small units, big ships, and some flying ones. But don't worry too much, the few are the encounters that push you to use specific weapons or to push a bit your crew, as if they have lower stats or if they are not arranged in the right positions. Otherwise it may feel like you're barely doing something. Of course, when you begin the game you have but few units, but later you will go for something around 50, each cat with specific skills and attributes. What's interesting about Buccanyar is that you have to use multiple commands on the go. For example, attack with each weapon, increase power output to move faster, change weapon sets, use a small side boost to avoid some attacks, release small naval or flying units, and so on. And yep, as the boats take the main dish in this game, there are multiple hulls that you can buy or change as you advance. Some specialize in damage, defense, something kinda balanced and stuff like that. But they can also change modules, increase or decrease the number of large or small weapons, increase the number of shields, etc, etc. Where each weapon has different stats like HP, attack, number of bullets per activation, the effective distance for said bullets, along vertical and horizontal range. So what I recommend is to focus in a kind of task at the time. What I mean is, if you're going to use small weapons, just add small weapons. If you wanna destroy big ships, then just add large cannons, and like that, try to keep a kind of synergy between weapons, because if you have mixes between sets, some enemies take a lot of time to be destroyed. Needless to say that as you advance you will be able to salvage better equipment or get them by buying at the shops. And as I mentioned, your crew members also affect your performance, because as they have HP, accuracy, speed, etc, the bigger the number, the better it works. On this front, it's relatively easy to assign each character, because each weapon has different slots. The first one gives you accuracy, then speed, and finally reload. So it is important to allocate each member in the right spot, as some are really good curing, others repairing, and others in different parts of each cannon. There are some quick options to allocate each crew member, but I recommend to take a bit of time to keep track of each party member, so you can do this faster each time you change ships. Okay, with those topics explained, the real moment where it actually matters is against bosses, because oftentimes they have long-range weapons, plus plenty of little ones if you get kinda close. So if you do not get your sets and crew in order, chances are that some of these bosses will beat the heck out of you, as they chew damage slowly but surely. Or, if you get hit by special moves, yeah, starting to fix everything has its disadvantages, as each command needs to cool down, needing to keep in mind multiple things, but just in those specific battles. Aside from that, I will say it is a manageable game. So considering all details, I will give Buccanyar an 8. In my humble opinion, it needed some extra challenges, and spice some confrontations, as they tend to be kinda repetitive, sometimes changing one or two ships. What makes this game entertaining were the bosses, as they push your ship to be maneuvered a bit more tactically, and just a few feel like they are cheating, but it is all about using the right commands. In the graphics section I check glitches, performance and other visual things. This is the Switch version of the game, played on the Switch too, where I had no issues in any battle. It doesn't lose frames and it never froze. Now the main art of the game is quite interesting, as everything revolves around boats and things that can be around the ocean. I gotta say that I like its general aesthetic, but it is easy to notice that this is a game on a budget, because the ships, weapons and some effects while fighting look kinda unpolished. Personally, I don't mind those details, but it's worth mentioning them. What I definitely believe was needed in this game were some extra models to show enemies. Yes, there are some cool enemies down the line, but I would have liked to see something much more diverse, because I remember like 4 flying units, small ships like 3, and main ships like 5. Yes, I am avoiding some as I don't want to spoil the whole journey, but in general it felt like they needed to throw some extra imagination in the process, as the experience starts to grow stagnant. As for the general interactions, 70% of the time it shows dialogues as a visual novel, with the exception of some moments where there are bigger images that show a particular something like the ship's engine and stuff like that. And there isn't too much to say. To me, it is a 7. While its main idea is unique, it needed some extra inspiration to leave those images as something completely memorable, I mean, most likely I will remember the art of the game because of its uniqueness. But aside from that, I don't know how long the memories of each ship or enemy will stay with me. And last but not least, its music. Buccanyar has 35 tracks, going for around 1 hour and 40 minutes, where most of them use air, string and percussion instruments, as trumpets, flutes, violins, drums, in few cases guitars and something like castanets, which surprised me. I mean, within these game settings, it isn't that usual, but considering that this game is all about sailing, it kinda goes in beach ideas. The general feeling about this OST is like you're sailing, not in a war, or like pirates, as we saw in East 10. Yeah, some tracks give you a kind of pirate feeling, but it tends to go into something much more melodious, as if you were being pushed by the air while on a sunny day, with no real worries. Yeah, that is the kind of idea I get while listening to this OST, as it is quite calm, even its main combat track. Of course, that is not all, because some pieces take some jazzy executions, some others martial rhythms, and some electronic in between, so it spices the journey good enough. If there is something I would point, it would be the number of combat tracks the game has, because you will listen to the same "Battle at Sea" plenty of times. It will get stuck in your head, because of how cheery it is. So yeah, I would have liked to hear some more ideas as the other combat pieces, because they were quite nice. I really liked how some combined electronic, marimbas and piano. To me the soundtrack is an 8. At the end of the day I believe it was quite entertaining, but repetitive. However, I scored it a bit higher because it was interesting to listen to the whole mix of ideas. Buccanyar final score is a 7.5. I believe it was slightly above decent, but it is hard to recommend to everyone, as it has a quite specific idea. So if you don't really enjoy the part of its repetitiveness, then it is like, yeah, no, I won't torture myself with this. However, if you don't mind that and found its level of customization interesting, yeah, it isn't something you see every day. So under that idea, I would say it was an entertaining journey. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.